Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Am I live? Am I live? Can I be heard is the question. Can I be heard? I always get nervous when I do Facebook because I can never tell if the audio's working. They give like no indications. Drives me nuts. I'm live. Hey Zoe, how's it going? It's a beautiful day. It's a ton of snow here in New York. Um, yeah, we shoveled a lot yesterday, and then today was a little bit funny because we had a plan to. I was gonna take the morning to figure out what I was gonna say, and then then me and my wife were gonna go out and finish the shoveling that we started yesterday. But then the neighbors came and started like shoveling, and then we felt bad. But I still need to prepare this, and so my wife went out. But then, of course, I look like a jerk. But but it was all taken care of, and it's good. So it was a little bit of a mad rush today, um, because a last minute hiccup in Jay's daycare system for the kiddos. There was a hiccup, and so unexpectedly, he was unable to speak today. So he asked me yesterday if I could, and I was like, sure, why not? And so I came up with a talk for today. So we'll give it some time for people to enter in. Also enter in, see it's not Jay, and leave. Which it's all right. I get it. I get it, guys. I'm not offended. Cruising my Bible all last night and this morning. I even whipped out. I've had this. I can't tell you how long. Hey Terry, how's it going? I can't tell you how long I've had this. Probably was it? Probably 23, 25 years or something like that. Um, it's like it's basically someone printed out the internet like 30 years ago, and now it just saves me from having to look it up. But I'm sure it's a lot of out of date, and I don't actually like just how this is gonna sound silly, but how Christian oriented this is, in which this it's like it's not acting like a actual dictionary of stuff. It has like an agenda, but my hair is it's been slowly going the way of the buffalo. So, hey Thomas, how is so yeah, so what happens is maybe I don't want to get into gender stereotypes, but I found for males, baldness is like the one thing that even if they're confident and self-assured, really starts to weigh on them. And so what was happening is when I had longer hair, I would see how thin it was going, and then I would be like so obsessed over it, like, and then especially what really tipped it over was actually COVID, because everything is now like online, right? Hey Linda. And so everything's online, and so I was always in meetings at work, and all I would focus on is like how light my hair was going. And so what I did was I shaved it down like to a little longer than this. But since I was so focused on it, hey Jay, yeah, I'm talking about how COVID affected me shaving my head. So we're all over it, my friend. But so when my hair was like buzzed down, so I wouldn't be worried about my baldness, what happened was it like grows in stronger, like on the edges and the back. So I kept thinking, like, do you ever see like photos of people that were in like the electric chair, and like they would have like that bald pattern from the cap? That's what I felt like. I just walked the Green Mile, so I just kept going down further and further and further. So yeah, but I like it. It's very, very freeing to buzz your hair down or shave it. It's like the most freeing thing in the world. No, it's not like a. The only reason I said a gender thing was because from people I've talked to, a lot of it comes down to um, men that never had issues with pride or vanity or thing. They say like this. Oh, me too. That's the one thing that I can't stand. So I think going bald is universal and it's a everybody would focus on it. But there's something in which um that even I don't know, it seems to be like the one common thread that I've found. And so yeah, it's certainly not a gender specific thing, but it is just funny how like even the most confident of men or women crumble over going bald. What normally happens is since speaking is still more on the newer side for me, Jay's been doing it forever, so he's got like a method in which he comes up with his talks. But what what mine are just like maybe like when you play pinball and you unlock the multi-ball and there's just all these balls like pinging back and forth and trying to get points and all that stuff. But each for me each pinball like is a completely unrelated thought to the other one. And so my method is like I start to feel like, all right, I'm seeing a common thread. I'm gonna be able to connect them. And so I just literally like a whiteboard. I just write down all of my ideas until everything's written out. And then I go back through that mess and I number them in which like a ranking um can like I could be like, all right, I could go from here to here to here to here, and then I rewrite it all nicely for me to see. So I tell you, um, I I do get complimented on the shape of my head also. So like I am like relieved that with the shape of my head because I'd be so nervous if I didn't have a head shape that looked good bald. And then I don't even know what I would do. Whoo, I would be a mess. So you know what? Why does I get the dirtiest glasses, man, alive? Okay, so let me clean off my glasses and then we will get to work. So, I hope everyone is having a lovely Sunday. Anyone on the northeast America, I hope you are surviving this snowstorm. Well, the snowstorm has passed. Now it's just snow. And then anybody probably in Canada or in the middle of the country would see the amount of snow we got and be like, "Oh, you guys just got a little flurry." But to us, we're like 2 feet, going nuts. All right. So where am I? Where am I? So I'll have my look my little all Studio Ghibli here, right, with Revolution, and then we have RoboCop, and then our Jason Voorhees kitty. Um, so I like that. Thank you. I have been getting further and further away from my hat now that I shave my head. It's very freeing. So, all right. So let's jump in, right? Let's just do it. Let's just shake loose and do it. So recently um I've been, I'm sure like most people have been struggling a lot mentally. There's just even Jay referenced it with like just being so over COVID. Plus you take someone like me that's prone to melancholy um and struggled with it for their whole life, and then it gets worse every winter. And then as of the last year, a little over a year, in the middle of November 2020, my dad passed away. Passed away on the same day that a good friend of mine passed away 15 years earlier. So I always dreaded November and I always dreaded that day. Now it's like my dad was like, "Oh, I got you covered." So we'll double down on that. And then it was also my grandparents' anniversary the same day. I mean, they both passed, but it's just like so. And I love like my poppy. He was very much a father figure. So it's just like from November like on through the winter. Already I struggle with mental health because it's darker, longer, and it's cold and dreary. You can't really do anything. Plus, we have all that stuff on top of normal depression, on top of COVID depression. Whew, it has been rough. So, but I'm working the program, take my medicines, go to therapy, and staying afloat for the most part. But a funny thought happened to me when I was wrapping Christmas gifts in on Christmas Eve. Now, I hate wrapping Christmas gifts, by the way, and I'm not very good at it. But there is a sweet spot of calmness that happens like right when it's just like the end of the evening, and it's the house is so quiet, and I'll put on music. And I used to have a real strong memory with this Tom Waits song called "A Christmas Card from a Hooker" in Minneapolis, and it had just a great memory attached to it of a quiet evening, that of a Christmas Eve memory, and it was one of my favorite quote unquote Christmas songs because it's no more a Christmas song than Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Sorry, we won't go there, but um, so I I was like sadder this Christmas Eve because that song didn't really hold any good memories for me anymore, which is sad. And then, but I had it on a mix, and then on the same mix was Johnny Cash's version of "I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day," which is great. And I'm sitting there wrapping like gifts, and I'm like, it's almost like I'm hearing the words for the first time, and I was like, oh, this is kind of how I feel. Like this sums it up, right? Because the whole song is this guy's just wandering the street, miserable because life sucks and politics sucks and and everything, right? There's no peace on earth. Everyone's just mean to each other. Um, the only difference is at the end of the song, he finds like peace and happiness, and I'm still just like, well, everything sucks. So like I where I struggle with is and it's something I'm working on, but there's a imagery that pops up a few times in the things that I listen to and I watch. One is in probably my favorite book and movie ever called No Country for Old Men, and there's a scene in which basically a man follows a certain amount of principles his whole life, and then it gets him to the he's on the other end of a gun that's pointing right at him, and the guy holding the gun asks like, well, all these rules that you followed your whole life led you to this moment, so like what good were they? And of course that's a very depressive way to look at it, but that is how my mind works. And the band Against Me has a line in one of their songs where she sings, if it doesn't matter now then it never really did. So I have that kind of mindset in which so many things that I do feel like wasted and completely pointless. And in the Bible, in Second Samuel, there's the story of David's mighty men. Right, he's got King David has all these great warriors, and there's this one one scene in it in which David goes, "I'm so thirsty, I could really use a drink of water." So his like soldiers go out behind enemy lines, and they fight and kill, and they bring back like a cup of water or a helmet filled with water. And David sees what his desires caused, like the death and thing, and just like dumps out the water. He's like, no, it would be as if I'm drinking their blood. And like I feel like those soldiers that went out and got that stuff, like, are you kidding me? Like everything I went through to give you this, and you just dump it on the ground. Like if it doesn't matter now, it never really did. What was the point of all these rules that I followed? So that's kind of where I'm at. But in the same vein of those mighty men, I do have one of the soldiers that I also really relate to and kind of how I live my life, especially when I'm struggling. And it's this one soldier who fought a battle so long and hard and tenuous and just never gave up that even when the war was done and he was victorious, his hand was so cramped on the sword that he couldn't drop it even if he wanted to. And when I read that when I was younger, I kind of made the decision that win, lose, or draw in my life, when I'm fighting for something like that, I want that to be my outcome. Like even if I lose, I fought so hard I couldn't drop my sword. And so that's why I don't give up. I keep going, excuse me, even with all of this depression wreaking havoc on all of us. So like I said, I have these ideas bouncing around in my head, and every once in a while I get a glimmer of like this gossamer thin like string that ties some thoughts together, and I try to like capture it. And but I had enough rattling around in my head, and when Jay was like, "Oh, hiccup here with the daycare, can you talk tomorrow?" And I was like, I said yes because I knew that I had enough pinballs in my head that I could get a talk out. But it's no surprise that in my mental state that I was in, that the one of the first places I turned to was Ecclesiastes. Pause for laughter, right? Because so anybody that knows the book of Ecclesiastes will kind of get why I would go there, because the whole thing is that's commonly suggested that King Solomon wrote this, and it all is just like wisdom only leads to disappointment. All it does is show you how unfair everything is, and wisdom never wins, and just like everything sucks, right? That's what he keeps saying. Everything is useless in Ecclesiastes. Like everything is useless. I do this, but it's useless. It's pointless, and it gets almost very like again Johnny Cash, like when because I referenced him with the Christmas song, but he does that cover of the Nine Inch Nails song, and he talks about like his empire of dirt, right? And that's very much what Ecclesiastes is. It's very it's like the anti Uncle Ben Spider-Man. You know how Uncle Ben says, with great responsibility comes no, with great power comes great responsibility. But in Ecclesiastes, it's great wisdom leads to great disappointment. It's the very anti Uncle Ben. Um, but it's funny that in the spiraling thoughts of Solomon, where it's like everything's useless, everything's pointless, everything sucks, he ends up coming to the same conclusion that Paul does, but in like a kind of more depressed way, in which like, oh, no one's special. We're all from we all come from dust. We're all returning to dust. We're no different from animals. In death, there is no hierarchy, right? Like if a man dies, or like a person dies, a human dies, or an animal dies, what there's no difference, right? And so it's very reminiscent of what Paul later says in a much more better headspace of, there's no slave, no free, no Jew nor Gentile, right? There's no hierarchy, right? And so I saw that connection with Paul, but then another thing that stuck out to me was where he talks about if a person dies and an animal dies, there's really no difference. And then earlier, maybe a few weeks earlier, I watched this show on Netflix, which I will recommend to everybody because I'm obsessed with it. It's only 7 episodes. It's called Midnight Mass, and if there was ever a show that was tailor made for me, like it's as if Flannery, like wrote it for me. Like it's insane. Like I absolutely love it. And I could talk if I ever start my own podcast, it's gonna be about this show, and it's only 7 episodes, so I just could talk about it forever. But one thing, and I'm not gonna talk about too much because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but there's this one speech or like a dialogue in which a priest gives, and he talks about he was in, I believe it was the Amazon jungle, maybe on like a missions trip, and he sees this great big waterfall, and it's just he's standing under the waterfall, and it's just just like deafening, right? The sound of the water falling. Anyone that's been to Niagara Falls or basically any waterfall, you're just like it is. The Midnight Mass fans, oh yeah. So it is like just like a deafening sound, and the conclusion that this priest comes to is that in, I believe it's Matthew 10, Jesus says that he's like sparrows are cheap, right? You could buy these sparrows. It's like two for a penny or something like that. And if one of them dies, like even God knows the passing of one cheap sparrow, right? And that's where Jesus also talks about like, aren't we worth more than birds? Which Solomon would say we're not, but Jesus says it, right? We're worth more than birds, and God even cares about a bird dying. Like he notices that. But what happens is in this speech with Midnight Mass, what he concludes from that is just with humans alone, there's like I looked up a specific number, but it's like hundreds of thousands of people die a day. Just people. So if you add animals into that too, it's just he was saying if God notices the death of one bird, then all of these deaths, it would just be like God standing under a waterfall of just, it would just be a nonstop barrage of like death to him. And how could any of our prayers ever get through all of that noise, right? So that's something that he was really struggling with. And so I saw that combination, that like tie-in with Ecclesiastes and how that led to Jesus um and even to Paul. And because, as you might be able to see in chat, when people watch Midnight Mass, they're just like, "Oh, this is the best. I love it." And then so I recommended it to friends, and a lot of friends, when they watch it, they're moved by the religious moments in the show, because what happens is it shows like a spectrum of religious people. It shows people that are so genuine and sincere in their beliefs, like they really are only trying to do what's right. And then you have your kind of more like stereotypical uh like legalistic, literal, the Bible is literal type Christians. And so it shows such a good example that oftentimes people that have a traumatic history with Christianity will find it to be both like cathartic, right, and also triggering at the same time. And with this one friend, she was talking about that she went to a Catholic school and was raised in that, but then as she got older, she started to see all these contradictions, and that really kind of turned her off. And now she is what she calls herself an atheist, right? And that kind of struck me because the only reason I feel like there are contradictions in the Bible is because people look at it so legalistically and so literally that it makes contradictions out of stuff that isn't contradictions. And so if it is taught that way, then of course all these kids are going to grow up and they're going to learn wisdom, which Ecclesiastes shows us leads to like disappointment and sadness. Um, but that's like the wrong understanding of the Bible. And so what happens is that we grow up in a society, especially like a Christian society, in which when it's focused on so legally and so literally, we end up getting focused on the exclusivity of what maybe Jesus teaches, and some certainly not what Paul teaches, except for in offshoot little sentences here or there. But as a whole, sheeps and goats, and no one gets to the Father except through me. Be in the world and not of it. The society that we grow up in focuses so much on it being an exclusive club, and they love that. They kind of really shun anybody or any scripture that's pointing to the contrary. And I remember one time taking a an apologetics class in college, because I used to be very like maybe kind of like Paul was, or like Simon. Like I used to be very zealous in my love for the Lord and the Bible, and I never really loved confrontation, but I was always like ready for it. And then that's I kind of started to learn, well, quoting the Bible at someone that doesn't believe the Bible means nothing. So I started to kind of like deconstruct, and I really got to a place that's far, far from that. But in this one class, in this apologetics class, we were talking about like how almost like they're trying to prepare you for the common arguments that you're going to get, such as when people say like, "Oh, it's an exclusive club," and one of the talking points that is was to almost embrace that, like, yeah, it is exclusive. If you want to be part of it, this is how you have to do it, and and so in having this exclusive take on it, it kind of just gives permission to judge and place ourselves above other people. But anywhere from Ecclesiastes to Paul shows that that is not the case when it comes to our beliefs. And then another byproduct of that same trend is that Jesus says he warns his disciples, and by and through the scripture warns anyone that follows him that like, oh, everyone's gonna hate you because look at they hate me, and if they hate me, of course they're gonna hate you. And so a lot of Christians use this to amplify the feeling of persecution. And now this is in no way to downplay actual persecution that happens in other countries and some really horrible stuff that happens. But just say from my focal point in America, the persecution comes from usually we want to act righteous and condemn people, but then people make us feel bad for that, or there's a war on Christmas or something along those lines. But what if we take a step back and we don't look at it so literal and so legalistically? And what if Jesus is trying to tell us, like, no, I'm coming down to teach you love and grace and understanding. I'm taking what Solomon said about there's no difference between a human and an animal. Like, we're all dust, and from dust will return. There's no, and I'm setting the stage for what Paul's going to be teaching you guys of there's no Jew, no Gentile, slave nor free. And I'm going to just show that love and grace is what's important. But people hate that. People absolutely hate that because they want division. They like, especially nowadays we're seeing it amplify, right? Agreeing with people if they're on the different side or different spectrum is a weakness, right? Or you're not committed to your cause. People people hate when you don't hate what they feel you should hate, right? Like it's just if you don't hate what I think you should hate, then like I hate you because um that means you like it and you shouldn't like it. And so what if Jesus is saying like, no, if you follow that kind of like anarchist grace, people will hate you for it because they hate what they don't understand. They they um they want division. They think agreeing is weak if you're not on the same side, quote unquote. And so, Jesus got that because he loved Matthew, but he also loved Simon, who probably wanted to kill Matthew, right? He loved prostitutes. He didn't, not only did he like love them, but we're not really shown any idea that he thought anything other than love for them. Not like, oh, I love the sinner but hate the sin. Like, it's just like he just didn't care. He just loved people and he saw how everybody was equal. And like, what happens to people that teach love, this kind of radical love and grace, right? You get Jesus, you get Gandhi, you get Martin Luther King Jr., and they all did not have a nice ending because people hate, right? Yeah, if you don't cancel who I cancel, then you're canceled. That's what Zoe said, and they're 100% correct. That's the society that we live in. But if we could rise above all of this, we could get to something that well, what Jay teaches as the God beyond God, but he gets it from somebody else, maybe Hegel or Kierkegaard. And so there's a funny scene in a movie that I watched just randomly yesterday, the movie Hail Caesar from the Coen brothers. I don't know if anyone saw it, but the studio, it takes place in the 50s, and the studio is making a Ben-Hur-esque drama, epic drama called Hail Caesar, A Tale of the Christ, which, if you guys remember, Ben-Hur, I believe, is called A Tale of the Christ. And it is one of the best depictions of Jesus that I've ever seen in film, because Jesus is only in it maybe 3 scenes, but his impact is tremendous with who he encounters. But behind the scenes of this movie, the studio gets together, just almost like a bad, like a punchline to a joke, right? They get a priest, a rabbi, a pastor, a Greek Orthodox pastor, priest, and they try to get them into a room because they want to make a depiction of Jesus that is not going to offend anybody. And the joke in that is clearly the head of the production studio doesn't fully grasp that in itself won't be possible because of everybody's contradicting views on Jesus. But even though it's a silly scene for a movie that's played for laughs, I just kept thinking that if they that they're so close to finding a God beyond God, right? Like if they could all find like ways to strip away all the legalism and the literal aspects of their combined religious text, they would find something that's a lot closer to God and Jesus than any one of their religions have, right? So that'd be like a God beyond God. And so that's just another example of how this legalistic and literal approach to the Bible is really handcuffing us. And in so my reading in Ephesians kind of led me to the letter of Colossians, because I was like, Jay's giving a talk on Galatians and he knows that far better than I do, and I'm not going to, like, that's his baby and he's on a roll and I could only learn from what he's saying. So I'll go to Paul somewhere else. And so I went to Colossians, and Paul says there that don't let others make rules for us, right? Like, and he warns of man-made religions. And I would say that Christianity, whereas it's often taught that it's, from God, divine, and everything like that, the teachings maybe are not man-made, but the religion certainly is man-made. And Paul warns about, like, don't let people tell you how to eat, how to drink, how to worship, how to talk. You know, he even nails it right on the head where he says that all of the rules for these man-made religions, they just are ways for people to pretend to be humble and find ways to not control their desires, right? And they find reasons to blame for their own shortcomings. And so Christianity is very much a man-made religion in that sense. If we're talking about traditional Christianity, especially the kind that basically, like, push Jay to the outskirts of the internet for his church and his gathering of his teachings of grace, because he became, an ally to the LGBTQ community. And that man-made religion, like, that aspect was like, no, we don't want that. We want these rules. And you could say this, but you can't say this. You can love this person, you can't love this person. You could eat this, you can't have tattoos, you can't, all the stuff that I'm sure so many of us have experienced, right? That led us all to here, to this community, which I will touch on later. And it kind of gets us to the point, and Jay maybe a week or two ago expressed it, like, because there's a conversation me and him have a bunch, like, if Jesus came back today, I always ask Jay, like, who would kill him first? Would the right or the left? Like, would the progressives or the conservatives? Like, it's really a crapshoot to who would kill him first. And because I feel like he would teach, grace and love everybody, and that would upset the people that wanted the exclusive man-made aspects of the religion, but then not canceling the people that they want canceled, they would want to cancel Jesus for that. And there is there's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He just passed away a few weeks ago. I really don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try. But I'm sure he's very famous. And anytime you see like a inspirational quote on Instagram from like a Buddhist teaching, it's like his quote, right? So I did some research on him because, as you guys know, I do have a soft spot for Buddhism, and it said that he practiced what they called engaged Buddhism, in which he would take the practices of Buddhism and use it socially and just beyond like reflecting in on himself. And I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's just from what I gathered. And I was just thinking of what if we did engaged Christianity, in which the same thing is you take the actual principles, the good stuff that you learn and that was taught, and you live it, right? Not in the sense of that Paul talks about with the false humility and a way to blame something so you're not held responsible. Um, but we use it and we live in love and grace, and that kind of anarchist grace that has no rules. Like you just great, everyone gets grace whether we like it or not. Um, so if we did that in engaged Christianity, that's where like miracles can actually start to happen. And now when I say miracles, I'm not talking about traditional miracles of of water splitting and fire from heaven, but more in the sense of uh, in the comic book graphic novel The Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan becomes basically a god esque figure, right? He's except the main his main issue is he gets to be so smart and detached, and he sees everything on such a minuscule level that, much like Ecclesiastes, like everything is just the same to him, and he gets a real detachment from humanity, to the extent that like Earth could be in trouble and he's just going to be hanging out on Mars because Earth is no more different than the red rocks of Mars. And um but what happens is he learns of one of his friends who um forgave a man that attacked her, right? And attack is nice because I don't want to be triggering, but we could all fill in the gaps there, right? And she forgives him, and Dr. Manhattan, it's like a revelation to him. And he says that for her to forgive someone that she had no earthly reason to forgive is a miracle, and it's as much of a miracle as turning oxygen to gold, turning air to gold. And that's the type of miracles that we can experience with that kind of engaged Christianity of love and grace. It's not easy at all, and it's a miracle because it's not going to happen all the time. For us to forgive people that we can't forgive and love people that we can't love, it's a miracle when we do, and it shouldn't be dismissed just because it's not like a typical miracle, like I said, like parting of the seas or healing sickness, or making an axe head float to the head of the to the surface of the water. Because that's what we think of when we think of miracles, right? There's I've been listening a lot to this old country western singer named Marty Robbins, and he does all these gunfighter ballads, and it's great stuff. And he has this great song called Master's Call, in which he's a wayward youth that gets in with a bad gang, and then through a series of really interesting miracles, he's saved. And so, like, basically, he's getting stampeded by these scared cows, and then lightning strikes a cow and he dies, and then basically all the cows pile up over that cow and never hit him. And it's a miracle to the extent that he is basically saved and born again, right? That's the type of miracles we want. But a miracle is a miracle no matter how you slice it. I remember talking to someone when I was younger, and they said, I don't believe in miracles, but I believe in small miracles. And for example, her father, who had passed, was in a singer. He was a singer, did like tight harmonies, and one thing that he would always sing when he was alive was up on the roof, right, or under the boardwalk, one of those location songs, right. And then one day she was sitting at a diner, and the diner, some diners have those little jukeboxes, and all of a sudden no one put any money in, and the song just started playing, right. So she believes in those types of miracles. But a miracle by definition is anything that's like not possible, and it's no more possible for a song to randomly play a song that's in your heart than it is for an axe head to float to the surface of the water. Like, they're both completely impossible. That's what makes them a miracle. So is it a harder miracle for God to raise Lazarus from the dead than it is to play a song on a jukebox? No, right? Because God, if we're believing in any sort of, well, I do love the Bible inside and out. So I do kind of tend more like, no, God's all knowing, all powerful. Like, nothing is beyond his control. And I only say his because it's just, I don't, it could be her, it could be it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want it to be triggering that I use certain pronouns. It's just what helps me. But since we're not talking about legalistic ways, that really doesn't matter. I've learned that the more I learn about the Bible and about grace and Christianity, the the less, like, a less amount of hills I have that I'll die on, because none of it really is that important. Like, all the literal details aren't important. Um, so the um, so let me see where I was here. All right, so yeah, so like, forgiving someone is just as much of a miracle as any of the other ones that we say. And the problem is that a lot of us get turned off to, like, where is God? Like, where um yeah, when I can, I'll try to use they. If it's there's no excuse. It's just 38 years of one way. I have zero problem with that. So let's try to say they. I love it. Um but so a lot of people, when you talk to them, say if they're atheists, or just a non-believer, they think it's all nonsense. Uh Arguments that we hear often are like, where is God? In the Old Testament, they used to do so many big things and interfere with people's lives, but now they're nowhere to be found. And so what's the deal with that? And so I was, this is semi unrelated, but I was thinking that, and this is a legitimate question if anyone has examples. Like, has God interfered in the Old Testament with someone's life that wasn't for a much bigger purpose? Do you get what I'm saying? It's never like, a lot of people, they're like, where's God? And they're praying for anything as silly as a parking spot, at the mall, or for their baseball team to win. Sometimes it's more serious. Sometimes it's for a loved one to get better. Um, but in the Bible, I don't know if God ever does that type of minute interference unless it's for a much bigger cause. Like, of course, oh, God saved Lot. Yes, but then from Lot, came Moab in the grossest way. And then Moab to Ruth, which was in the lineage of Jesus. So it's always like a much more macro thing, even though it seems that we're seeing a small, like, oh, you know, God God intervened with well, yes, so like Moses, like as Terry said, Moses, but like Moses supposes his toes are roses, but no, what Moses that's a much bigger purpose, right? It's not Moses for the sake of Moses. It's not Moses praying that Aaron gets better and then Aaron gets better and disappears or anything like that. It's for a much bigger purpose. So that's why it was just one of my thinkings of did is like maybe God is not It's not that he doesn't intervene anymore. It's just he always did it in a much for a much bigger purpose than what we're finding ourselves calling for. But that's neither here nor there. Um, but um, but the reason why I bring that up is because it's about rearranging our thinking and our view so it leaves less room for legalism and more room for love and grace. And when we do that, there is less contradictions. Like I said in the beginning, it's we only get those contradictions because we're like, no, this means this and this means this, and so they can't mean anything else. And it's something that we've already always done. And I'm gonna bring up this Bible dictionary which I referenced before, and we always kind of cherry picked ideas, which is it's fine. Like every Jesus cherry picked, everybody cherry picked, but from this dictionary, I'm going to read about what they say about the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes purports to be a book that reflects the best human reasoning about the meaning of life. It is important not to mistake Solomon's provincial conclusion for divine truth. And then they also say the book of Ecclesiastes then cannot be used to establish biblical doctrine. Instead, the musings of this wisest of men establishes the limits of human reason, which is great, right? So it's basically saying no, there's some real great wisdom in Ecclesiastes, but it's not divine wisdom. It's just that of man. So it's like basically saying, so like don't hold too tight to it. It's not that literal. It's not a legalistic view. It's just a man's musings. So if we've always made room for this, where has that gone? Like why do we, like I said, that was from back in the early 90s. So in the last 30 30 years or so, it's kind of changed. So but we always had room in our mind to do that, to where we'll be like, no, this is literal, but this is metaphorical, this is stuff. And as that disappears and that's less and less, and it's like, no, the Bible means this, then all it does is complicate it. All you do is get knots tied in it, and you get contradictions, and people get turned off by it. And but in doing so, in removing ourselves from this legalistic view, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because as Paul writes in Ecclesiastes, that one of the reasons we do these man-made religions is it gives us ways to excuse our bad behavior, right? Like kind of like the devil made me do it type mindset. And when we remove that, then it's kind of just on us. Like, no, it's no one made you do this. There's no anything. It's just it's on you. You were a jerk and you did a bad thing, and that's just on you. And but there is mention of spiritual warfare in the Bible, right? We don't fight in like a war. There's a war going on, but it's not a war of flesh and blood, but of principalities, of spiritual aspects of it. But what again? Like if that, what happens if that isn't literal either, and it's just on us? And I kind of got the mindset of Gremlins, both the movie and the where they come from, right? The idea of Gremlins comes from World War II, maybe a little earlier, in which if something happened with the plane, they would always say like, "Oh, a gremlin did it." A gremlin got in there and messed it up, and that's why we're having all these issues. There's a Twilight Zone about it, literally a gremlin attacking an airplane. Um, and even in the movie Gremlins, like all the deaths in it of humans are kind of made to look like accidents, right? So it's like that same mind of of Gremlins. And I bring that up because what if our spiritual warfare is not a literal like devil, like in our like causing us to do something, the devil made me do it type thing, but it's more just our mind, like a darker part of our mind that does, like we don't always have the best thoughts, but that doesn't mean that it's the devil speaking in us. It's um just our minds sometimes are light and sometimes are dark. And so it's almost like when we get, it's we're always going to be battling within our minds of doing the right thing or doing usually the easier thing, right? The right thing's always harder to do. And and again, going back to Marty Robbins, I've been obsessed with his song "Cool Water," and it's a great song. It's just about this guy lost in the desert with his horse named Dan, and they're just thirsty and they're close to death, and they keep trying to move on, keep powering forward, and keep going because it's like there's gonna be water somewhere. It's waiting for us. And midway through the song, the main character starts telling his he could tell that his horse is starting to hallucinate with like mirages and just delirious from thirst, and he keeps saying, "Don't listen to him, Dan. He's a devil, not a man." Um, and he spreads the burning sand with water. Right? He's making these mirages, but don't listen to him. It's a devil, not a man. And that's what really got me thinking in terms of gremlins, or like that gremlin in our mind, that it's not like in that song, it's not literally like the devil popping up and steering Dan the wrong way, but it's just his mind's playing tricks on him. And the guy's like, no, 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 it's a gremlin. Don't listen to it. It's not, it's the devil, not a man. And so matching that with um, taking the literal out of the Bible, that just kind of it puts more onus on us. But I think that that's okay because we need to be accountable for what we do, and we can't just blame good people or bad people. It's all about us. And in in doing that, we find that the Bible, um where is it, right, it points inwards from both ends, right? So the Old Testament points to Jesus, and everything from Jesus, the New Testament points back to him. Like it's like this is what it's all about, is this person in the middle and these teachings in the middle. And the Paul writes that the law, right, the law of Moses is a shadow of what's to come. And so if you think of it in that mindset, if the Old Testament's over here and that's all the law, if you're looking at it, looking back on the light, like light showing onto Jesus, everything that Jesus stands for would just be a shadow, right? That encompasses the law of the Old Testament. And um and Jesus kind of says that too, right? Like says Jay likes to point this out, right? The You've heard it said, you've heard it taught, right? Like so Jesus is basically like, you guys have heard this, but it's all been a shadow. What I'm telling you is the reality of it. This is not a shadow. This is light. I am light, right? So everything behind me is shadow. And and it kind of gives us that glimpse into what it's supposed to be, love and mercy and grace. Just as Paul talks about, we're looking at things through a dark mirror, right? A dark window where it's almost the truth, like the truth is beyond it, but it's distorted for us. And that's what it that's what am I trying to say? I'm sorry. This is it's a little bit tricky for me. Like I said, I just finished this right before I started. But the um basically what I'm saying is that Jesus, even though there's all these laws that we talk about, like we have to do this, don't do this, circumcise, don't circumcise, meat, eat meat, don't. None of that mattered, right? It's that was just a shadow of the truth. The truth is that none of that matters. It's all grace and love and mercy, and everything else is either a shadow of what was to come, or you're looking back and you're still not getting the picture yet. Jay, I think, said in his last talk, Jesus is on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they do. And just like from Jesus's point of view, it's like, I just told them, and they literally don't even, like, they misunderstood. I'm not even dead yet. and they're not grasping anything that I taught them. And no wonder you would cry out, right, that you're forsaken. But um, so basically, just right, faith, hope, and love. Love being the greatest, right? Everything else, if anything impacts our love and grace towards somebody, then it is we're seeing the shadow wrong. And but that's what's good about revolution, because the in Ecclesiastes, to wrap this up, um he talks about the strength of community, and that's what we need, and that's what revolution is, right? We're a community in which um we're strong, but together we're stronger. And it's funny, in the in the book Ecclesiastes, he talks about a rope that's made from three strings is more stronger than it by itself. And I'm like really big into yo-yos, and it's funny. I'm sorry, no one on the podcast will be able to hear this because it's not visual, but on YouTube and Facebook, I'll see if you could see. But a yo-yo string, you won't be able to see too much. Sorry, is it's not just a string. It's like it's literally um three pieces of twine that are strung together to make one string. And that's very much us here, right? Any community, but us here in Revolution is we're stronger when we're doing it together, right? You know, you could walk 1 mile, but if you're walking with a friend, you might be able to walk two. And when we fall and we start maybe thinking too legalistically, or we're arguing over cancellation, we have other people that make up that rope and that thread, telling us like, no, come on, it's all about love. It's about community. It doesn't matter the details. We you could hate you could hate them in a way, but you still have to love them, and pray for them. And they're we don't get we don't get the easy out of just canceling them or hating them. And it's awesome and it sucks at the same time, because it's not easy, but it's a miracle, right? It's a miracle akin to turning air to gold. So I guess I'll end there. This was the first time I was able to get through the whole thing. I literally finished my notes at about 1:53 on the East Coast, which is 7 minutes before church started. But if anybody wants any, so I hope it made sense. But if anyone wants to talk and engage, and so thank you, Zoe. Thank you. It's I really enjoy talking to you guys. Also because it forces me to, I never tend to speak on anything that I fully know. Like I don't I'm not like teaching you guys anything, right? Because I'm just expanding on stuff that I'm working through myself. So if it very much in that same community sense, if it helps you and it's helping me at the same time. So I really enjoy it. And yeah, it was fun. And yeah, I'm just my little guy here. So if anyone has any thoughts or ideas, agreeing, pushing back, questions, you name it, we got it. Oh, hey Steve, I threw in a little singing in the rain there for you. But yes, Steve put up a donation link. If you could, that would be amazing. It goes without saying that we care much more for people than money, but there are some costs that make us have to operate. So any help would be amazing. So I'm glad it's making you think different and engage different, because that's what it does for me. I actually I sent Jay a text earlier this week because I was really struggling, and not like in a depression sense of like a boo hoo woe is me, but I don't know anybody, if you struggle with depression, you kind of get the feeling that it is all like, remember, I'm saying this about myself, so it's not an attack on anybody that's also suffering, but a um a depression tends to be more like a selfish mindset. Not You're not selfish for being depressed. I'm not saying it's a selfish mindset where everything's happening to you, right? Like it could be anything. Someone could drop a pen in the hallway and not realize you're behind them, and you bump into them, and you're just like oh, everything's about me. Like, traffic's making you late. Like everything is just, you can't really think outwardly. You're thinking inwardly. And I was having some struggles at work. It was a big week, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And I found myself, getting kind of like, not attacked, but like approached from all sides with different points of view. And I really had to like legitimately practice grace and understanding because I wasn't feeling it. It was not a natural state to me, but I was just thinking of revolution. I was thinking of Galatians. I was thinking of stuff that Jay has taught. And I just realized that it's a practice, right? It's not, it's, I think, was it Aristotle or Plato said that virtue is a practice that's needed, much like playing the flute or the lyre or harp. So and so I was really struggling with that, and I was really having to focus on grace. And I mean, I had a good therapy session in which it was one of those therapy sessions where when you leave it and the next day you don't really think it helped, but then all of a sudden 2 days later you're like thinking clearer and you're like, oh, okay, it really did help. And a lot of it really came down to like really showing and understanding grace and realizing that when you show grace to somebody, they're not always going to understand it or get it or appreciate it. They probably won't return it. And so yeah, so this community is very important, and what Jay really teaches is very important. And yeah, struggle like it. That's something great. That's also part of Ecclesiastes. Is there's nothing new under the sun. That is when you read. I encourage everybody because I don't think it will exasperate any depression that you're feeling. Ecclesiastes is short. It's maybe like 3 pages, and it is just, it makes you not feel alone because Solomon, if it was written by Solomon, the wisest person that the history that the Bible tells us about, and even references we say today about Solomon's wisdom, and he's feeling everything that we're feeling today. It's really remarkable. And for me, I do think that I do believe that there's a lot of truth in the Bible, and I know a lot of it can be metaphor, a lot of it can be that interpretation. But to me, it's stuff like this, like Ecclesiastes, in which it would he Solomon wrote it down, and it's just as true today as it was back then. Like that blows my mind. Or when was it in Proverbs when they say a fool just as a dog returns to his vomit, a foolish man will return to the error of their ways. And you're just like, how how is that wisdom so true back in backwards BC as it is in 2022? Like that's it's just insane. And then as a writer, so many of the stories and intertwining, and something that's set up in Ecclesiastes is also then kind of paid off for in the Gospels or in Paul's letter. And I'm just like, man, that's too good. That's writing that's not human. But that's just my take. I would never try to convert. If anyone thinks that it's all fiction, legalism's out the door, baby. We don't care. There's nothing literal here. It's all safe as long as it helps. Then who cares how it helps? Hey Jenny, how's it going? So, if anybody has any closing thoughts, if not, we will be ending soon. I just want to give people the opportunity to speak. And yes, everybody watch Midnight Mass. I'm telling you. It's all right. It is a it's it in a good way. It's very much like a Stephen King work. I'm not a huge Stephen King fan myself, but his stories are tremendous. I just am not a fan of the actual literal writing. So So have that in your mindset. So don't think that I'm giving you something that's kind of like The Crown or Downton Abbey or something like that. You guys know I love my horror stuff. So, but I highly recommend it. Like it's incredible, and it'll make you think. It will make you think and question, and it's tremendous. So the narrative arc of theology. Yes, Thomas. Yes. And so, and then next week we'll be back to Galatians 3. You'll have more the more of Jay's insights and Paul's insights, and it's we'll continue that series. This was a brief hiccup. Terry, I cannot give any spoilers of Midnight Mass. My apologies. I will not. I will not. It's an incredible show. And the acting. If you like acting, if you like writing, if you like religious art, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's a perfect show. And everybody, thank you for being here and thank you for sticking through. We got like 10 that made it to the finish line, so we'll take it. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for your insights and your encouraging words. And next Sunday at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we'll be back with Galatians 3 out of, I don't know. We'll see how many parts of the series we get, but Galatians 3 next week. So I'm going to leave it here, and thank you guys very much. It was a lovely time, and you guys are awesome, and thank you for being here, and I will catch you guys all out on the flip side, whether it be on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. Thank you again, and have a great Sunday, and okay, bye.